Have you ever thoroughly wet your paper, then waited too long so it was dry by the time you were ready to start painting? I've done that. Sure, I re-wet it, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, that can't be good. Surely the sizing in the paper has been affected in a way that it's no longer fresh. Meh, just some thoughts. So I've been watching art tubers for a while, and I thought I'd like to try this art thing. How hard can it be? Kidding. I've been doing this for a while, but sometimes it's a good idea to come at things from a fresh perspective. Hi, I'm Irene, and today is a painting day. The supplies for this session are Hahnemuhle cold-pressed watercolor paper from their collection line, several watercolor pans, French ultramarine and Payne's Gray from Da Vinci, and Winsor Violet from Winsor & Newton's professional line. Also, Holbein Artist Gouache in the colors ultramarine deep and permanent white. For brushes, I went with an Aqua Elite modeler and a Neptune quill for the watercolors, and a couple of small select brushes for the gouache. All are from Princeton. My goal for the background was a softly mottled look, so I wet the paper thoroughly with the modeler. Yeah, it's called a modeler, but for this project, the actual mottling was done with my quill brush. First was the French ultramarine. Although I didn't choose the colors with it in mind, I do get a kick out of watching the colors spread like that. In watercolor world, that's called dispersion. Then it was Payne's Gray, and last was Winsor Violet. Speaking of fresh, nothing's as refreshing as a cold, wintry blast to the face, the sort that accompanies newly fallen snow. Yes, I've been watching live cams from the mountains again, because this past week, all we've been getting here in South Puget Sound is gray skies and some rain, which is why I wanted to paint a snow scene. And for that, I wanted a dark background. So once the first layer was dry, I added a second layer, this time wet on dry rather than wet on wet. That gave me a nice backdrop for the snowflakery to come. Apparently, for the next couple of days, there's snow in the forecast. As a homebody, I can say yay, but I know that snow-covered roads can be frustrating and downright scary. I've been stuck in this stuff before, and there are those who have to work outside, exposed to the elements. What a miserable time they're having. But for me, for now, I can enjoy watching the white stuff fall while sitting on the couch with a blanket and a hot mug of Twining's Gingerbread Joy. Man, I should be creating ads. Cue some gentle jazz music while zooming in on a stuffed stocking with a box of Twining's tea peeking out. That's when I'd come in with, "Am I dreaming of a new toy? Not when I've got gingerbread joy." Then a long and loud because just like Stan in Nightmare Alley, I was born for it. Wonky, misshapen snowflakes are on somebody's list of most annoying things, I'm sure, so I pulled in a ruler to try and help with, symmetry. Look, there's probably a better way, but I just couldn't figure it out. So I ended up placing more pencil marks than I wanted. But it worked out, since after the piece was finished, I went back and erased most of the graphite. That part wasn't included in the footage, so you'll have to imagine the pencil work away. Producer Mike and I were given a fresh-baked homemade loaf of bread. It's soft and delicious, and I wondered what we had that would be a worthy accompaniment. Luckily, there's a lovely hunk of cheese in the fridge. The type eludes me, but it's very nice and sort of fancy, not something we normally get. And now I'm wondering where the heck it came from. I mean, it's hard to picture someone sneaking in and leaving fancy cheeses in our fridge, as delightful as that would be. But in case we actually do have a ninja cheese supplier, psst, you know what goes well with cheese? Wine. I'm partial to Riesling. Just saying. The snowflake layer is a gouache mix of mostly white with a hint of blue. I had looked at snowflake designs beforehand, so I knew what sort of styles I wanted to create. But except for those few pencil marks guiding placement, the flakes were done freehand and made up on the spot. Maybe it helped that I used to visit interactive Create-A-Flake websites back in the day. Some were better than others, providing different levels of intricacy. But I can't find them anymore. And that's fine, since I can now get my flake fix by painting them. I forgot to mention that the earlier splatter effect was created using thin mixes of gouache in several gradations of pale blue. I did that before the flake layer simply because I wanted the flakes to really stand out without any splatter on top, possibly obscuring their designs. I like the effect. It looks like there's distant snowfall in the background. I'm aware that childhood memories are often tinged with rosy fondness, but I definitely recall having fun making paper snowflakes. Is that something you did as a child? Carefully folding a sheet of paper, cutting out random bits and pieces, then unfolding it to reveal a six-pointed design, all symmetrical and lacy looking. As a kid, it boggled my mind. Not sure how I learned it, maybe from my mom, maybe from school, maybe from the World Book Encyclopedia. Our set was from the 1960s, I think. Not positive about that, but the important thing is I loved going through those hardbound volumes. It was our little mini library at home. But there was a supplemental volume. I think it was called Make and Do. That thing was used to death, figuratively. My siblings and I didn't whack each other with it. Through that book, we learned paper crafts, science experiments, and other fun yet innocuous activities to keep us occupied in a pre-internet era. Normally, this deep in the season, I'd have watched the usual holiday-themed movies, such as Elf, Christmas Vacation, It's a Wonderful Life, and A Christmas Story. But I wanted a break from the old chestnuts. So this time I went with A Muppet Christmas Carol and Klaus instead. I've seen them before, just not as much as the others, and I find both to be highly entertaining and rewatchable. Muppet Christmas Carol streams on Disney Plus, and I believe Klaus is on Netflix. Klaus was actually recommended to me quite a while ago by my nephew. It took me about half a year, but eventually I did watch it, and I've rewatched it several times since then. So, good call, Remy. He and his partner, Eiley, were the ones who turned me on to the wonderful Over the Garden Wall years ago. We'd stayed up one night watching all 10 episodes, one after the other, and it was a most worthy binge. The Snow Queen is a fairy tale from the 1840s written by Hans Christian Andersen. I became a fan of the story a long time ago, and honestly, I can barely recall what happens. Still, I've always wished to see a satisfying film version. Unfortunately, they seem to never want to use the original story and end up changing things drastically. I remember getting excited in the early 2010s when I first heard that Disney was making an animated feature supposedly based on the Snow Queen. So I was highly disappointed when that project became Frozen, which used very little of Andersen's fairy tale. I've since learned to appreciate Frozen on its own merits, but still, where's my Snow Queen movie? Producer Mike and I like to treat ourselves to a box of See's truffles every December. It's become one of our seasonal traditions. They're all delicious, of course, but my favorites are the fruity ones, such as lemon, pineapple, blueberry, and key lime. The level of tartness is just right. I do wish they'd include the yummy apple pie truffle in their boxed assortment, though. It was a sad day years ago when our closest See's Candies location closed their doors. Thankfully, they come to our mall every December at least as a holiday pop-up store. I think some accents using Kuretake starry colors in shades of gold would have looked good on this piece. But I was keeping things streamlined. In other words, I didn't want to chance mucking it up by adding too many elements, especially as this was going to be gifted. By the way, you know how they say, he knows if you've been bad or good? Well, for goodness sake, do your favorite art tubers a favor and hit those like and subscribe buttons. I'm happy to share this seasonal painting. Thanks for watching, and another big thanks to those who have supported this channel in various ways, whether through likes and comments or gifts and donations. You're all very much appreciated. And since we're already near the tail end of December, until next time, I wish you happy holidays and stay artsy, my friends.